Hi everyone, today we are at 34 Tropical. I'm talking to Johnathan Maltby, fellow career coach. And today we're going to have a discussion about, I'd be interested to know what advice you've got for people who are about to set out on a search for a new job.
That's a great question. Hi, everybody. I think to have a successful job search, you kind of need three essential factors. The first one is getting your head into the right space and the way you are approaching your job search and how you see yourself. The second one is really around your brand, and the third part is really around building momentum in your job search. So I can kind of take you through those sort of things.
I like what you said there.
Yeah.
So mindset, I mean, as with so many things in life, is critical. So how would you prepare like the best mindset for your job search? Where do you start?
I think the first thing to understand is that you're going to be going on an emotional roller coaster. When you go into a job search, you know that some days you're going to have those highs where someone says, hey, we look good on paper, loved your CV, why don't you come in for an interview? And you go, yes, this is the one. And you feel really on top of the world. And then the next day it all comes crashing down when they say, sorry, you've not been successful in your application. So just understanding that you are going to go on an emotional roller coaster. It's all part of it. I think another part of the mindset is really how you view yourself and your career as you kind of go into the job search. I think most people, what they do is they position themselves as a candidate for a job. They've got what I call a candidate mindset. And that basically says that, hey, you've looked at the key selection criteria for a job and you're going, you know what, I think I'll be a really good match for this job. And so what they do is they position themselves as a candidate. I want to put my bum in a seat in your organization. Now that seems logical, right? But that doesn't do anything to kind of differentiate you from all the other candidates out there trying to vie for the same position. So you want to think about it this way, all right? All companies or organizations have problems. And these problems could be around their ability to deliver their products and services. It could be problems around generating revenue, sales and marketing. Find the problems that you're really good at solving, all right? Now, here's the difference. Here's the thing you want to think about. These companies are in pain because of these problems. They can't do what they want to do because these problems are hindering them. The bigger the problem for the company, the bigger the opportunity for you as the person who's applying for that job. Because here's the mindset switch you're going to have. You're going to think, I'm not a candidate for a job. I am a solution to your problem. I'm going to lead you from pain because of this problem to gain because I've got the expertise and the experience to help you solve that problem. So that's the first thing that you want to try and think of is I'm a solution to your problem. And I can tell you it is an absolute game changer when you change that, because you can take that mentality into your CV, into your LinkedIn, and know that question that when an interview typically starts and they go, well, thank you very much for coming in to see us today. Why don't we start this interview by getting you to tell us a little bit about yourself? And if you position yourself as that solution, it's going to have a much more powerful impact than coming across as another candidate. So I'd say that was probably the first thing that people need to think about.
Sure.
The next kind of area that you really want to think about is your brand. And when I was a recruitment consultant years ago, I noticed one thing, that it wasn't always the person who had the most skill and experience that won the role. It was the person who had the strongest brand, and they could confidently articulate that, especially their value offer. So branding is a really, really important thing. You're like, what are you showing up as? And you really want to understand, what are you calling yourself? What are you saying? I am a, which is a really good way to kind of start your elevator pitch when they say, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes.
I am a. So figure out, what are you going to call yourself? The next thing you want to think about is really, what is it that you do? At the end of the day, not what you fill your day with in a job, but what are the problems that you solve? I am a, whatever that is, and I help organizations overcome the issues of A, B, and C. The next thing you really want to kind of understand is, what do you bring to the table in terms of your skill and experience? And I find being able to articulate that within the context of the problems you solve really makes it a lot more powerful. I'm really good at solving these problems. Here's my capability to solve these problems. The next thing you want to kind of think about is, why should someone care? And that's really around the value that you bring to an organization. Because a lot of people really get stuck on this value. Your value is what differentiates you, not your skill and experience. It's what that skill and experience translates into. at the end of the day. So what's the value you bring to an organization? And your value is usually associated with the outcomes that you can help an organization achieve, typically as a result of solving those problems. So what does a life look like for the organization once you've helped them solve those problems? What can they do now that they couldn't do before you got your skills and expertise stuck into that issue?
So what does that, how does that sort of manifest itself in your LinkedIn and your CV? So you've mentioned the interview, but like, how do you get that across?
I think that comes down to the way you kind of position yourself in your story. I've got a saying that I use, and it's quite a harsh saying, but go with me on this. Organizations don't care about you as much as they care about what you can do for them. So the way that manifests is about putting your audience at the center of your brand message. It's not about you that they're interested in as much as what you can do for them. So if you say, I am this, I help organizations solve these problems so that they can achieve these outcomes. And I call that like a customer-centric or user-centric sort of storytelling model that we don't really talk about ourselves so much. We talk about ourselves within the context of how we bring benefits to an organization. So if we put, they're thinking when they're interviewing you and reading you, they're thinking, how do you make us better?
Yeah.
Because we want to fight this, what I call that, what's called the so what factor.
Yeah, of course.
We were having a chat about that the other day. It's like, where you say something and you think it's really good, but in their mind they're going, well, that's all very well and good, but so what?
Yeah.
How does that help us? So you've got to be able to fight that so what factor. And that means if you say something like, I'm really good at this, being able to translate that into the next step. I'm really good at this, and that means I can do this for you guys. So that would be the next thing. Yeah.
Excellent. So you mentioned brand. So you've talked about, I guess, the starting point, right? But can you explore or tell us a bit more about what's involved in, I guess, creating a powerful brand and what that looks like for your clients?
For my clients, I call this really figuring out. A lot of people come to me and they go, I want you to help me with my brand. I had this conversation with a client this morning. Can you help me with my brand? And I think to be able to have a powerful brand, you really need to understand what it is you are branding, what it is that you bring to the table.
Yeah.
And what we need to do then is really unpack you, get all that stuff that's floating around in your head into nice, neat little boxes. And I call those little boxes your professional identity. So we've got to figure out, what is your brand DNA, your professional DNA that's sitting underneath the surface. And so often, that often comes across as a really cluttered, jumbled mess. Noise in the head that stops people from being able to communicate that with impact. So we really need to define what I call like the 5 pillars of your professional identity. And the first one is figuring out, what's my professional label? What am I calling myself? In other words, I am a. We discussed that. The next thing is, what do you do? Exactly. Again, we talk about the problems that you can solve for organizations. The third pillar is really around your skills and expertise. So we go deep into that. And the cool thing is that most people tend to only understand their expertise at a very surface level, but they don't understand that they're actually got a gold mine of expertise sitting underneath that. So what I help with my clients is to dig into that and bring all of that gold out, and then being able to articulate that in a very, very powerful way. The fourth pillar we look at is your area of specialization. So over the course of your career, you would have built out a breadth of skill, but we want to know where your depth of skill lies. And that's kind of like your area of specialization. Within your field, what would you be regarded, or what could you be regarded as an expert at?
Sure.
The next area we look at, and this is probably the most important thing, is your value. What value do you bring to an organization? Because that's what they really want to know at the end of the day. So once we've kind of figured out those things, then we start taking those parts and we start evolving that into a really powerful brand message that you can use in your CV, your LinkedIn, your elevator pitch, a bio, a website, any of those sort of things. And we create one central message. I call it the one message to rule them all, because that means that when you've got a central message, you stay true to your brand across all of those different communication channels. Just like sales and people do that in marketing. You know, when you see a product advertised on one platform and then you see it on another platform, whilst the wording might not be identical, it's still the same brand. So we want to get a cohesiveness of brand across those different areas. So when I work with my clients, we really dive into that gold and bring that out.
I like that. It's a little bit like your secret sauce, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like what you bring to the table.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Excellent. Look, I know we talked earlier, about the preparing for a job search. It's tough, right? It's tough mentally, and I think you mentioned the term before about momentum, right? So,
Yeah.
what's really key about building and keeping that momentum? If you've got any tricks or tips?
Definitely. One of the things that you want to do to have a successful job search is to be able to achieve consistency in activity, daily activity, and deciding what are the daily things that I must do every single day. Now, most people tend to either do it sporadically. They'll look on the job boards and then they'll apply for a job here, and then a couple of days later they'll look at the job board again and see something new and apply there, and it's not consistent. When you don't have consistency, you don't build momentum. And what we want to do is we want to do repetitive things each and every day that starts to build that momentum of job-seeking activities that leads to interviews. And the cool thing is that when you start interviewing and you start interviewing at multiple places, this weird thing happens in the universe where you just start to get more opportunities come to you.
I've noticed this with clients too. Yeah,
you've seen that as well.
Exactly.
The more you interview,
Yes.
funnily enough.
Yeah.
So I think it's really establishing, right, what are 3 to 5 things that I need to do every single day? And some of those things could, first and foremost, make sure that you're mentally strong for the day. Start the day with something that boosts your energy. Maybe a bit of exercise. For some people, it's a bit of meditation. Something like that to get your head in the right space for applying for that job search. Because as I said, it is a roller coaster ride. Then maybe going, okay, let's scan the job boards. Let's see what else has come through in the last 24 hours. I'm going to apply for that. And looking for a job is essentially a full-time job in itself. So the next thing you want to kind of think about is not putting all of your eggs in one basket and just looking at the job boards, because that doesn't really build momentum. The next thing you want to do is think of outreach and networking. What networking events can I go to? Can I reach out to people directly on LinkedIn about that job?
Yes.
If there's a company that you are interested in working at, can you reach out to a few people already working in there? Maybe some of the decision makers, maybe even some of the people who are doing that job already. So finding opportunities to have conversations leads to opportunities as well.
And it's a positive activity too,
Yeah.
because quite often just sitting there and looking at open jobs, people feel quite. It can be really negative to look at each job and look at gaps and constantly be questioning whether you're going to be a match for anything,
Yes.
right? So flipping that round and doing something positive, that's reaching out with new connections or researching companies, can build positive momentum.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you can set yourself a goal of finding 5 new people to connect to, or researching 2 companies in your industry or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And it builds momentum, doesn't it?
100%. I've got a saying that I use. It's called feeding the beast. Think about the job search as a beast that you are continuously feeding. And the beast is hungry. It needs to be fed every single day. And that means that what it needs to be fed with is activity to build that momentum. One of the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to job search is they pump out a whole lot of applications and then they sit back and they think, I just want to see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
And they might get a few bites. They might go, I'm interviewing here. I've got this place I'm interviewing. This piece, people have reached out to me. And here's the thing, they stop applying. And typically it can take, 2 to 3 weeks from the time you apply for a job till the time you're sitting in an interview. If you stop building that momentum, you could end up twiddling your thumbs for another 3 weeks if nothing comes to fruition. The time that you stop applying for the job is the time is when you sign on that dotted line. Even that morning when they've even given you a verbal offer, still apply for jobs, because I've seen verbal offers come to nothing. Nothing to do with you, just the company decides whether they're going to pull the role for some sort of restructure or something like it. It does.
Yeah.
It does. So feed that beast every single day until you've signed on the dotted line. Be relentless, but make sure that you're spreading your activity out under a number of different areas and not just looking on the job boards. Yeah.
And having a bit of variety.
Yeah.
A variety of activities, right, that you can do when you sit down in the morning. You can make progress every day.
That's it.
Even if you're feeling, maybe not calling people or writing another cover letter. You can do some other activities. More positive,
that's it.
right?
That's it. Yeah. So that's probably my best 3 tips for finding a job. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks very much.